basically, that's it. Just keep your face close to the mic, and we're ready to roll.
Sounds good.
And I actually do the live cutting right here.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Nice. Your little VJ setup there.
Yeah. Well, or else you're because it records in all 3 cameras, and then you have to edit it, right? And like that's hours. So at least I can live cut it a little bit faster.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So, how have you been? Where have you been? What's going on?
Yeah. So, just got back from a little Northern California excursion. Oakland, San Francisco, Tahoe, and back here in sunny Los Angeles.
And did you see the zombie apocalypse in San Francisco?
Yeah, it is. I have not been to Oakland in years, and
You're not missing much.
it's just honestly, it's sad.
Mm.
It's sad. It's such a naturally beautiful part of the world too, and you got Facebook and Apple, and then like Oakland. Our Airbnb in Oakland was
Yeah. Throw the headphones on. Yeah, it's
there we
nice.
go.
Yeah,
That's nice.
now you can hear it. Yeah, no, it's Oakland and the whole Bay Area is terrifying these days. I was up there twice. I was in Monterey, Monterey Peninsula to see a friend off who was rowing across the Pacific.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he survived. And then and then I was in San Francisco for a few days, also meeting with Jesse Rosenberg.
Great.
Yeah, and he it's scary. Like downtown San Francisco is like a shadow of its former self.
Yeah, it's different. Growing up in Sacramento, that's the big city for us. You drive an hour and a half in to go see your favorite band. It's a night and day difference of what it looked like in the late '90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
So let's take it back. So where are you from?
So I'm from Northern California. A small town called Placerville, about halfway in between Lake Tahoe and Sacramento. Very rural, small town vibe. I'd never really been to the big city outside of San Francisco occasionally until college. I flew out to university in New York, having never been to the East Coast before. No parents, just my big rollerboard suitcase with everything I owned, and got to the airport and took a cab to the dorms.
So what was it like growing up in kind of small town Northern California?
It's interesting. It's a particular mix up there. People forget that California, the second you get away from the coast, it's red. It's bright red.
What do you mean? What do you mean bright red? Is that like a Republican joke?
Yeah.
Or is that like the color of the actual ground?
No, it's mostly green. But in terms of politically, it's like it gets pretty country out there. As soon as you get away from your San Diego, your San Francisco, it gets rural. People have country accents out there, and they're all rednecks. And so I think we had a fun dynamic in Placerville where actually the gold rush happened. So the main street of Placerville is Western themed.
Oh, really?
They have one of my favorite bars has a dummy with a hangman's noose hanging outside the window. And the courthouse is where they used to hang like cattle rustlers and people stealing gold.
Oh my God! So you're like your hometown is back in like 1849.
Exactly. That's what it feels
That's amazing.
Like. That's what it feels like, and it's cool too. We're pretty close to out where like sorry, what's his name?
What is his name?
The writer, the famous writer who wrote Huckleberry Finn.
Oh my God! Come on, Huckleberry Finn, the great American author.
Yeah.
That none of us can seem to remember at the moment.
It's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday. People are
Mark Twain.
Mark
you.
Twain.
Okay. That is as someone who was almost a literature major in college, that's a little embarrassing. Mark Twain traveled a lot of that part of California and has some really cool short stories about the weird rural parts of California.
Amazing. Amazing. Where else did Mark Twain go that I filmed in? Oh, Heidelberg, Germany, right? That was it. He did he ran up a whole bunch of debts and then went to Europe to try to make some money writing and ended up in Heidelberg, Germany, and we were filming in his footsteps. Something that you helped prepare as a producer.
I worked on as well. I remember the kind of fun synchronicity of finding out that Mark Twain information and tracking down the local Mark Twain impersonator, which it
That's
seemed
right.
like you guys had a pretty fun conversation.
We did. Yeah, Chad lit it beautifully, and Chad, my director of photography, and then yeah, the Mark Twain impersonator in the bar in Heidelberg, Germany, that he used to go to all the time. Yeah, that was a great little scene.
Did he break character when you guys were off camera?
He did break character. I think we sat down and we stayed in character for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then broke it up and just had a drink.
That's fun.
Yeah, so just enough to get on camera.
That reminds me, something you brought up at the beginning of this conversation. You said a friend paddling across the Pacific.
Mhm.
Have you ever, you're all about these kind of ultra endurance trips, riding around China on motorcycle, going on these long treks. Would you ever do an ocean trip?
So the water scares me massively.
Yeah.
So I can swim fine. Um, you know, parents, checked that box and taught me how to swim, so that's no problem. But the actual ocean and all the things in it um, just freaks me out. And to be out on the ocean for that long, I think it took him 40 days, is pretty uncomfortable, pretty terrifying. And then, of course, I think the biggest issue is just the other personalities on the boat, right? He was one of four. So, anytime you do an expedition with a group of people, there's always, personalities that you have to deal with, and you get used to them. But I don't think I'm up for a big ocean adventure.
Yeah.
I feel much more comfortable on land.
Yeah. Not this year.
not this year at all. Okay, so growing up in red Northern
Yeah.
California. So
I
how did you even think like I want to be a storyteller?
think for me, I grew up very Catholic growing up. I had a very Catholic upbringing.
It's all starting to make sense now,
Yeah,
by the way.
exactly.
The whole
So
I've
the
known you for
guilds.
years, but the backstory is filling in so many gaps.
Yeah, my dad is Irish Catholic from Boston, so it explains a lot. He sees a lot of himself, every time we watch The Town, The Departed. It's like, so I see a part of my dad I'd never seen before. But he, the way that my dad skirted around all the other kids, I remember Titanic came out when I was a kid. My parents didn't want me to see it. They thought it was too risque. And so the way they'd get around that.
Well, we did. I mean, Kate Winslet did bare her breasts in
Yeah,
that, I think,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Which I know is a seminal moment for a lot of children of my generation.
It was for my generation too. I'm maybe only 10 years older, but yeah, I remember that. Like Leo was drawing Kate Winslet and she was naked. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was when was that? Like 99?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was still pretty young at that point, and I remember my dad, not wanting, typical American, not wanting us to watch the nudity, but fine with violence and all that kind of stuff. Was he directed me towards kind of like more interesting classic films. I remember seeing 2001: Space Odyssey, watching The Graduate, Easy Rider, those kind of films. He would rent the VHS from the library. That's what you did back then.
The VHS.
Or it was early DVD days, and I remember my dad was a big eBay guy, and so he would get an Alfred Hitchcock DVD on eBay that had burned in Japanese subtitles because it was out of print in the U.S.
Sure.
There was the Criterion Collection, didn't have all the beautiful remasters that they have now. So I think as a kid, it was basically my dad not wanting me to see graphic nudity, so I watched some of the great American films.
This is I mean that's a great story. Good for your father for keeping you away. But you're like the last generation of people who grew up like before porn was like on demand.
Absolutely.
Like when your parents are worried about Titanic, that that the internet hasn't really taken off yet.
There was a naivete that does not exist anymore. You have kids with iPads when they're 3 years old. That they've seen something a lot more randy than Kate Winslet's nipple.
The loss of innocence is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah. We were the last era where someone's older brother gave them a porn magazine that they'd keep under the bed.
Yeah, paper magazines, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, that's all we had. That's what you had to go to understand, what else is in the world. Yeah.
Different times.
So your dad basically gave you a film education of all the great classics.
Exactly, and I remember taking kind of like a film education class in high school, and having seen most of it already as a kid at a time when I think maybe I didn't fully understand it,
Sure.
but I had had this film education from my dad. So
So, but hold on, but Kate Winslet was off, was not allowed, but like the sodomy scene in Midnight Run was no problem.
yeah, exactly. It's you know it's funny where those dividing lines get made, and of course that only lasted because as soon as I was old enough to you know be out at other friends' houses all the time, I saw all those movies anyway.
I know, like that was the best thing is like when you'd have a sleepover as a kid and there would be like 10 of you around and like some guy would bring like for us this is way back in the day and this was very risque in the moment, but this goes to show you how like innocent we all were. Is we would watch they used to come out with this like Sports Illustrated swimsuit VHS tape
Oh yeah,
and that was like I can't tell you like that was huge back in the day.
that's only a step above of like the people that save the Sears catalog, for the underwear section.
Yes. Okay. So beyond masturbatory preferences of teenage boys, you got a great film education from your father, steering you away from
Yeah,
all that nudity and female attention that you didn't need.
yeah, and in high school, I still even at that point had you know living. I went to high school in Sacramento. It's not a place where a lot of film greats come from, or a lot of people at the high school I went to went into business or went into work for the government in Sacramento. That's
Right. Sacramento's the capital
the capital,
Of
so
California.
that's what everyone's parents did.
Yeah.
And I got the opportunity through school. These local guys from Sacramento had just made a documentary. Actually, funny is kind of a full circle thing is they make a lot of stuff similar to some of your work.
Oh, really?
They were just these two guys from Sacramento who decided to make a documentary about a Chinese Uyghur baseball team. And they went to that part of China. And it was basically this league where they're essentially second class citizens at that time. It was before we know a lot more about that now. But they got to do this cool tour of that part of China playing baseball.
That's
And,
amazing. That would
and
have been a great story.
yeah, and
Because no one plays baseball in China. Like
exactly.
it's such a rarity to see anyone with a ball and a bat. And there's no diamonds. Like they don't build them, right? Everything's just football pitches, soccer pitches, like
Which
everywhere.
is, and so they were playing on truly handmade fields and stuff like that, and they had made this, self-financed it,
Right.
and got it on PBS. They were able to get PBS to pick it up to show in certain markets.
PBS.
Yes.
We're dating ourselves
Again.
again. Yeah. Do you
Again.
remember when like PBS used to be like a real home for like great documentaries?
Oh, totally. And it also, as a California native, we are near and dear to our hearts is the TV personality Huell Hauser. He was on PBS for decades, and he would travel around California, learning about interesting places and stuff like that. It was this very wholesome show.
What was his name?
Huell Hauser.
Huell Hauser.
Yeah.
And he just did like for the California PBS, just went around and explored
He'd
California.
go to a vineyard. He would go to like that Main Street gold rush town. He would go to all these interesting things in California. So for a lot of people of my age range, that's what was in the background on TV all the time.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you grew up like absorbing travel content via like PBS.
Exactly.
That's wild.
Without even really knowing it. It's kind of just like background television. And that was, pre Bourdain, it was like travel content was on the Travel Channel. And I think it wasn't, didn't have this kind of elevated status that I think it has now.
Right.
Because there's so much cool work being done in the space.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was influencing me, and those guys.
Before Bourdain and before sorry to interrupt, we'll come back to that. But before Bourdain was doing like No Reservations and Parts Unknown, obviously, and then the chef's tour or whatever. Before that, it was really like Michael Palin, right?
Yeah.
For the Travel Channel. I mean, I think he made like 200 episodes of whatever his show was that just went on for like decades.
Wow.
Yeah, I think because I remember seeing that everywhere on the Travel Channel back in the day.
Just all the time.
All the time. Yeah, sorry. So back to your filmmakers.
Yeah, so these two guys, local guys who had this success story of getting something on PBS for our local area, like that was a success story. And so they partnered with the local PBS station to start a program for local high school students. They called the Documentary Foundation.
Amazing.
And they went to local high schools in the area, gave talks to people. I think I saw a flyer for it or something, and it was like, after school, come to this talk and learn about this program.
It wasn't an advertisement on Instagram or TikTok.
Exactly.
It
Yeah,
was a paper. You
yeah,
actually
that was MySpace days, and I don't think they post about it on MySpace, but these guys basically would partner, groups of teenagers from different high schools all across the area, give them a camcorder, a crappy little lav mic that we plugged directly into the camcorder, and said, make a documentary.
Yeah.
And we'd check in once a week, on Saturday mornings. It was when I was in high school, so I was always deathly hungover at the 8 a.m. Saturday meetups where they'd review our footage.
So Kate Winslet's nipple was off.
Yeah.
It was out of bounds, but underage drinking on a Friday night was no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
The morals and not being American is so strange, because you come back here and everything's upside down and twisted in the wrong way.
We have weird puritanical ideas about nudity, but violence, drugs, and alcohol, no problem.
Bring it.
Yeah. But
okay, Saturday mornings.
So I made this, and I think the tapes are lost to time. They're on physical tapes, but I made a documentary about local Sacramento area ghost hunters. I found it was just an idea I'd come up with.
You beat isn't like every other show. Isn't there like a whole ghost channel?
Oh yeah, the ghost hunting stuff is just like huge now, and at that time it was still it was all over TLC and Travel Channel and the History Channel had ghost shows. And I found out that someone who was occasionally on those shows was based out of Sacramento. So I got a hold of them and their team, and just at 16 years old, was driving to these people's houses with a camcorder and filming them in their homes talking about ghost hunting. And
that's pretty ambitious.
Yeah,
that's a lot of drive and determination, like just being young and calling up adults and being like, hey, I'm coming over.
Yeah. And one of my best memories from that is me, and I think the girl who was also in my group was even younger, from a different high school. She and I showed up to this woman's house. She was kind of the main ghost hunter, and this woman.
Can we call her Captain Ghost Hunter?
Yeah, the Captain Ghost Hunter. Her real career was that she was trying to be kind of a MC for events, kind of a host, a singer, performer. And she said, this was also like July or something like that. And she said, I have a Christmas album I'm working on. Do you want to see it? This is in the midst of us talking about ghost stories, telling her stories about, her experiencing Michael Jackson's ghost on a ghost hunt. She says, do you want to hear my Christmas album?
Hold on. So from ghosts, and then just like midway through, she's like, this is going to be my big break. I'm gonna share my Christmas album with these two 16-year-olds.
We're on a consumer grade camcorder. I want to make that very clear too.
Terrible audio.
Yeah,
right?
terrible audio. I think that was ultimately why this documentary never saw the light of day, was because the audio was unusable.
You could remaster it.
Yeah. I have to find whoever has these tapes. But she took us back into her garage studio, where she had all the mixing board and everything set up, and sang a very scandalous version of Santa Baby to 16-year-olds while we filmed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would like to see that version of Santa Baby.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So you're interviewing this woman who's a well-known ghost hunter, and what she's like, she just wanted to show you, or she was trying to seduce you?
Who knows? I still wonder sometimes.
Oh my God.
So that was your first project. That was my first project, and you can always look back and be like, man, if I had the opportunity to make that again, what an interesting group of characters that we got to meet. But it taught me, how to think about composition, how to taught myself editing software, the basic things that are the tools that we still use to make things now.
Do you remember? So when I didn't get into film and television or making any content really until like late 20s or early 20s with photography, but late 20s with film. And But I remember I played basketball at the University of Toronto, and we used to have those old tape machines. Um, because we'd have to watch tape like every day or every couple days we'd be watching tape preparing for the next team, and we used to have like two machines, and we used to have this jump thing where it could go back and forth, and we used to have these like buttons that you had to like press in order to cut a clip and then record it onto something else, and it was all just manual, and it was all VHSs, and you could hear it like and and it's just like I just remember that like late 90s.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were using stuff like that.
We were just after that. So we were in the early editing software. Um, we were at the beginning of the digital age. So it was still using, tape media, when we were filming it, but we were uploading it to computers
Right.
and using, Sony Vegas or whatever antiquated editing software was out there back then.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I was chatting with someone the other day here, and we were reminiscing. Like, I remember doing my first few stories for the New York Times in film,
Wow.
and like going out, shooting film, coming back to Shanghai, processing the film, using a scanner, using a light board, picking out my selects, scanning them, editing them. And then I remember how long it took me to email them. Um, and I even remember some big magazines, they didn't have the capacity to take digital images. So I would have to scan my photos onto like a DVD, like a Blu-ray or something, and then ship that so that they could get it on their side and do something with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's funny how it all comes back because now film is getting popular amongst the Gen Z kids.
Yeah.
I just bought a couple roll of film the other day for like a little point and shoot camera I have. There's new film brands. Like there's like,
Well, vinyl's huge,
yeah,
right? Like
vinyl,
vinyl's coming back big time, and
digital cameras from the early 2000s when they were 1 megapixel. I remember my mom and I bought my dad a digital camera for his birthday one year. It was a 1 megapixel camera,
yeah.
and those are in demand now. Kids love them.
Why? Because you can lose them and break them, and no one
And
gives
I
a
think
shit
they
because
they
they're
just
20
love
bucks.
that we can get these 4K images on our cell phones now. So there's something kind of like nostalgic about the pixelated, gauzy image you
Well,
get from those cameras.
well, grain is nice, right?
Yeah,
Grain works.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you know I think digital grain can be beautiful too. I think that's always been the thing that a lot of photographers and cinematographers have always said is film grain is beautiful, digital noise is something you want to avoid.
Yeah.
There's some filmmakers that use grainy digital stuff in beautiful ways.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you're in high school in redneck Northern California. Your words, not mine. And you're making a documentary film. Your first terrible equipment. Dodgy Santa baby lady tried to seduce you in a garage. You somehow made it out alive. So was like, how massive was that experience for you in wanting to like move to New York?
Yeah, I think for me that seeing these guys who taught the program, which is just funny, in your head, I'm like, oh, these guys are old. These guys, I'm probably, significantly older than these guys were at the time now. But seeing these guys that had made it work and made it their job, first time I'd ever encountered anyone like that in real life, and I started to think, well, I love doing this. This is something I could do to make money.
Yeah.
And I had always known that I didn't want to work in an office, and I had thought maybe I'll be like every kid want to be a marine biologist. I love Jacques Cousteau books, and I was
We started off by saying I'm terrified of the water.
yeah, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
I loved all that stuff, and I thought I was maybe gonna go to school to become like a scientist or something. And I just when I got the opportunity to make that first film, I fell in love with it, and
Or just the Santa baby part.
just the Santa baby. I've been
Naturally,
chasing
yeah.
that high ever since.
That's
Yeah,
that Santa baby moment.
that was the peak. Um, and I got to make a few more documentaries with those guys, and got the opportunity to show at some film festivals. A highlight was I had a film show at the Sacramento Bicycle Film Festival, which also happened to be on the night of my girlfriend's prom. So I showed up. I left her prom halfway through,
How did that go over?
Well, and also, mind you, she was nominated for prom queen too, so I didn't even say for the ceremony.
So she was nominated for prom queen. You ditched her,
I ditched her
and you went to the film festival.
and
That's dedication,
got on
baby.
stage to introduce my film in my tuxedo, which was great because this is a bicycle film festival, so everyone's in jean shorts drinking beers in a grass lot, and I was in full tuxedo on stage introducing my
Classy,
film.
classy.
Yeah,
But do you remember? Do you remember like the early days? Like I feel like the early days of like filmmaking was so much about like cycling and skateboarding.
yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
just feel like people were always filming guys doing tricks, guys and girls doing tricks on skateboards, bikes, like BMX guys doing jumps, like the guys down
Absolutely.
in Venice Beach, like anywhere there was like an empty pool somewhere.
Yeah.
I feel like that something like some part of the documentary experience was born
Yeah, absolutely. And
through those.
that's a lot of fantastic directors come from that. Spike Jones came from BMX and skate films.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that was a big influence on me as well.
How good was her?
Oh, so good, so
So
good.
good.
And his he has a skateboarding film called Yeah Right.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Some really cool VFX in there. When in earlier days of VFX, absolutely amazing skateboarding film. Even if you're not into skateboarding,
Okay.
but yeah,
Spike Jones is legit.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
he
he's
is legit.
amazing. Yeah.
Um, we all dream of having those careers where you can do one project every several years and still be beloved and successful.
Well, who's the one that just owns that space? It's Paul Thomas Anderson.
Of course.
Like he just rolls up and does like one movie every 3 or 4 years and can attract the best talent,
Yeah.
the best writers. Daniel Day-Lewis did like what 4 or 5 of his
Yep.
movies, won Oscars twice, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Just epic.
the sad truth of it is that none of those movies actually make money at all. Essentially, all like American art house films do not make money.
Yeah.
It's like a secret Hollywood accounting thing, and it's fortunately we have wealthy people that want to keep making these movies,
Yeah.
but yeah, those auteurs are not who are making money for the studios.
Yeah. It's it's crazy how many movies get made a year and how few of them make any money at all.
Yeah.
Like no one knows that. It's
And in no other business would that work.
it's it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think there's some, like anyone who really cares so much about their profession and their craft, you just get screwed financially at some stage because you're always going to want to make stuff that doesn't make financial sense because your heart is in it. And at another business, like what if you're working at like some computer company, it's just like, well, if that doesn't make money, it doesn't go out the door, right? Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as your feelings and taste and aesthetic gets involved, yeah, it's no longer purely a commercial venture anymore.
Right. But I mean, how sad would it be to only just deal in commercial ventures for your whole life? I mean, how many people out there just, yeah, it would be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not for me.
No, not for me either. So okay, so you're in high school, you're making some docs. You had some older woman try to Santa baby you. You ditched your prom queen
I
to
like
go to
Santa babying is now a verb. Yeah.
Santa babying is a verb. You ditched your prom queen
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend for a film festival, which I don't know. That should give you automatic entry into NYU right away.
It was in fact the film that got me into NYU. So it paid off. It
Wow.
paid off.
Does she know that?
She does know that. We're still close friends, so I didn't piss her off too much. She understood the vision.
So if you're in Northern California, what and you want to tell stories, and you're like 17, like what universities do you apply to? I don't even know. Where do you even like want to go? I mean, obviously you went to NYU, but you didn't just apply to NYU, like do or die, right? Like where else did you apply? Like what
Yeah.
was the process like?
Yeah, so I think in my mind, also everyone I knew, no one left the West Coast. You live in California. You're like, why am I going to leave California?
Yeah.
And
Different perspective,
yeah,
maybe.
exactly. And also it's a very rural Northern California thing to think that like big cities are like elitist and uninteresting.
Yeah.
You believe that like nature is the most valuable thing.
Well,
So
there's something in that.
there is something in that,
But
but also like you can enjoy New York City as well. Yeah, I thought I was going to stay in California. You know, I still wasn't sure I wanted to do film. I applied to some schools where I thought, you know, got good financial aid, was going to study some kind of, you know, environmental science or something. But I was like, you know what, I'll apply to some film schools too. And I remember I'd applied to USC, which is always up there with NYU as the kind of main competitive film school. And you had to do an early application for USC. And I remember I submitted a film that I wasn't super proud of. It was a documentary that I was just like, this is the best work I have right now, but it does not feel USC quality.
A day in the life of Santa Baby.
Yeah, this was a different one, but then in between that application and my NYU application, I got to make another film that I was the first one I made up where I was like, this looked how I wanted it to look.
Okay.
This was, I had the idea, and it more or less looks like the idea I had.
Which is no easy task, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a hard thing to do, is like to have an idea in your brain and then make it happen.
Yeah.
The way that and have it received the way you want people to receive it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the balancing act of making anything, particularly making video,
Yeah.
is you know, you're trying to take these, you know, ideas that are in your head and make them a reality, but then also having the kind of ability to realize when something in the moment is better than you had it in your head. And I think that's the balance you have as like someone making things. I'm sure you know on your show is that you have your ideas what something's going to look like, and you want to do your best to make that happen, but you also have to be open to the universe giving you mistakes and accidents and interesting characters that you never would have imagined.
Yeah, I mean, I get Santa babied all the time,
Yeah.
and no, but it's true. Like you have a script or you have a rough outline of what you want, and then of course, you know, the universe coughs up magic at every moment, and you just have to be open to. Well, first of all, you have to be open enough to recognize it.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many people in our business that are just like in tunnel vision,
Yep.
and they only see the project at hand, and they don't see any of the variations or anything that can go kind of in a different way. And I think, like, obviously low budget stuff, you have much more freedom in doing that, because when you do make a mistake, it doesn't cost like tens of thousands of dollars. It's not like you're working on a Disney movie or whatever the equivalent of a big budget movie would be. So that's wild. So you applied out, and the funny thing is, you applied to some other like schools for
Some
the marine
state
biology
schools,
and
yeah, thought I would live in, you know, the Bay Area or somewhere, you know, close to home, doing a kind of more conventional degree. But I got accepted into NYU, and I remember, you know,
Did your dad know that there were nipples in New York?
yeah,
That
he,
that was
he
gonna
was aware of it. They loosened the restrictions a little bit when they got older and realized that they kind of had no control over me.
none whatsoever.
And the harder they tried, the more rowdy I acted.
Absolutely. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I remember, you know, getting the acceptance letter and, you know, all my friends kind of celebrating for me, and my parents having a very candid conversation with me because it's exorbitantly expensive to go to NYU.
Right.
And them saying, do you want to, for the rest of your life, think about what could have happened if you went to NYU, but you decided to go to the safer, less expensive school?
So you rolled the dice and made it happen.
Yep.
That's amazing. And they were supportive.
Yeah. And that's I'm very grateful for that. You know,
Did you keep the acceptance letter for NYU?
I think I don't think so. I think it, or it might be buried in a box, and you know,
In the basement somewhere?
yeah.
I
Exactly.
didn't I went to the University of Toronto, not for filmmaking or anything. I just studied like politics, but I didn't keep my acceptance letter. But you know what I did keep is in like 2010, when I wanted to make my first TV show, I wrote to like all the big like travel nature broadcasters, and I got rejected from all of them. And I kept all those letters and I put them on my wall, and just would look at them every single day.
Yeah, that's some motivation for you.
Absolutely. Okay, so you get to NYU. You're like 18.
Yep.
In New York City.
Yep. Never been to New York City before.
And what was it like?
it was eye opening. Like I said, from small town Northern California, going to the big city, it's like the amount of arts, music, and culture you get exposed to um, immediately was just like overwhelming. But also, I knew that it was the place to be for me at that time.
Sure. Like, did you get caught up in like the New York energy where you were like out 5 or 6 days a week? Yeah.
Of course,
Those
and
are all the
that's
mistakes that all the freshmen have to make.
yeah, exactly. And that's it's funny having moving there when I was 18, and then have friends that moved there, in their 30s or whatever. They still go through that in their 30s,
Yeah.
but I'm happy that I got it out of the way when I was 18 years old. And your mistakes are a little bit less important.
A little bit less important. Your body can rebound a little
Exactly.
faster. But marijuana wasn't legal, right?
Yeah.
Like I go back to New York now, especially since COVID's been done. I've been traveling more, right? And when I go back to New York now, all of Manhattan smells like marijuana.
Yeah.
Like
They have
everyone is just
mobile
smoking and
dispensaries.
walking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Back when I was there, you'd still have to spend a night in jail if you got caught smoking weed,
a,
which is crazy.
a night in jail.
Yeah.
If you were just smoking a joint.
Yeah.
That's crazy compared to where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in LA, like there's weed dispensaries on every street
Everywhere.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't
It's insane. I can't imagine what it's like now. But
As a university student, how hard was it to get marijuana in New York in the early 2000s?
see, we had, I don't know if you've ever seen the show High Maintenance on HBO. It's an excellent show about a weed delivery man. But it was the era of the New York City weed bicycle delivery person. So
Bicycle
so
delivery.
they
That's
ride around on bicycles with their little, cycling messenger bag, come into your apartment and essentially dump out their messenger bag. And
oh,
this is a very specific New York thing that I don't know that it exists in quite the same way anymore. But
amazing.
yeah, of course, you're buying some 10 times more expensive than it is in California, and it looks like it like went through a sewer.
Yeah, terrible,
Yeah,
terrible quality.
exactly.
Did you see oh, what's the guy's name? John Mulaney, famous comedian. I think he's New York based. He came out with a new 1 hour on Netflix, and it's called Baby J.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
And it's all about because I don't know, he had this like super squeaky clean image, and then he went into like COVID hit. He went into rehab. He got divorced. He married some actress. They have a kid now. Like he went on this whole like kind of tangent. And anyways, his reputation is a little bit more badass now. And he has this like 10-minute segment all about getting drugs in New York. And he's like, one of his drug dealers wasn't even a drug dealer, but every time he saw him, he kept asking him for drugs, and he didn't want his friend to go to some other person and get like not good stuff. So he became a drug dealer just to facilitate his friend, so that he wouldn't end up getting like low quality drugs.
Yeah, the rules are different in New York City. It's true.
Yeah,
We can't really fathom that in California. It's a little different over
it is. Yeah, it's a little different, but it's much more laid back over here.
here. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how are you feeling in your couple months in California? How do you feel?
Yeah, it's time, I think. Like I've been chatting with people for the last couple of weeks, and it's been really nice. And I think, I crossed a milestone um, this year or late last year, 2023. I crossed a milestone of having lived outside of Canada, outside of North America, longer than I had been in Canada. So I left Toronto when I was like 22, and I turned 45 last year. So it's yeah, you're getting up there, right? And it's like I've lived abroad. I was in China for what 18 years, and then Dubai for about 4 years, mostly during COVID. And now it's just like, why not come here and really, use all of the things that I've seen and done and learned from the world, and maybe try to come to LA and have some more interesting conversations with people about making shows, making, just being involved in the creative space in this part of the world. Because I've always done stuff for the U.S. audience and for the for European audience as well, but I've never lived in those places. And I think now it's great to be here in between the adventures. Because I was saying this to not you, someone else the other day, just by texting. I was just like, I don't think there's going to be like another moment really soon where I'm going to be like 300 days a year on the road making 8 or 10 episodes for anyone. So I just feel like that space is gone um, at the moment. Like I had a chat with a development executive a couple weeks ago, and he was saying like, if you're not Chris Hemsworth, don't even try. Like,
Yeah.
because they would rather, like, these broadcasters and these people making content or greenlighting stuff, they would rather spend, 10 or $15 million getting Chris Hemsworth than spending like $1 million on me to run around the world for 8 or 10 episodes, right? Like, they're just the budgets and the splash that everyone's trying to make is so massive right now, and I think COVID has accentuated that
Absolutely.
and kind of and put people in this massive de-risking mode.
And the shame of that is it's the same thing when we were talking earlier about Disney movies, but the more money that gets pumped into a project like that, the more risk averse they
Yeah.
become, and the more interesting ideas get suppressed because they're afraid that you know doing something a little bit more interesting or a little bit unconventional is not going to be successful.
Yeah.
So you get that Zac Efron travel show that's just right up the middle.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Mm.
It's not particularly good either.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, maybe this is predates you, but I remember talking to like television executives back in the day, and they would be quite candid. They're like, okay, we have $10 million and we want to make 20 shows, and we need 20 showrunners and 20 directors, and then some will have talent, some will be documentary, some will be narrative only, with stock footage, and they would spread out the risk, and and then one or two or five of those would kind of surface to the top and maybe win an Emmy or a Peabody, or for something. um, but that idea of like just spreading around and having different narratives and different personalities and different points of view is just gone. Now it's just all completely celebrity driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me just want to take pictures of my feet and start an OnlyFans site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
Well, not I've got a nickname now. I think I might be Santa Baby.
Santa Baby. I like it. I like it.
That'd be good.
I always say this to friends who that's I feel like a common joke. People say, "Oh, I'm going to start selling foot pictures." I think
It is a common joke, but you read stories about people making huge amounts of money on this.
I
My
think
feet are gorgeous.
I think what people take for granted, is to be a successful, you know, someone who sells foot pictures online. You're really a marketing person. You know how many people are probably selling foot pictures online and not making any money.
So it's the same as Los
it's
Angeles as,
it's the
as
same.
television
It's the
producers.
same thing.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It's about getting your name out there and getting clicks.
Yeah.
It's the same business we're in.
Maybe, maybe, yeah. No, it's
So
true.
I'm saying the skills are transferable. I'm just saying that you've actually been training for the last, decade.
To take pictures of my own, feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's just decades of working for the BBC and Discovery. I'm just gonna, yeah. No, but I've actually started a Patreon channel, and because people like OnlyFans or Patreon. But everyone was like writing me all the time, like, where can I see your shows? Where can I see all the behind the scenes stuff? Where can I see this? Where can I see that? And I just thought I should just put it all behind a paywall, with Patreon, and then of course if people want to support, they can chip in as well, and you get like $5 or $10 a month from all these people, and if they're actually enjoying the content, then it's wonderful, right? And trying to make stuff specifically for them, maybe some behind the scenes stuff that's not available elsewhere. So it's been nice, and people have been like super supportive. So that's been something I've been working on maybe the last 6 months.
Which is it's such a cool, with all these streaming platforms and all this content we're getting all the time. I think something that's so cool about that Patreon model is just giving audiences a direct way to like support the creators that they really like.
Sure.
Being able to just say, okay, I don't have to search for Ryan's shows across all these things. It's like I can literally meet Ryan here, directly support him, and watch his stuff. And I think that's why so many cool, podcast hosts, comedians, all kinds of artists are moving to that kind of model because it just cuts out so much of it.
Well, and if you do have like your own fan base, which we all do now on social media, whether you have 100 people following you or a million, it doesn't matter. Like these are all like your tribe, right?
Hmm.
And if you've got them and they want to see more of you or hear more from you, then yeah, like why not? It's crazy. Like I mean I was just like, so social media, Patreon, being able to build your own website effortlessly, you know, and then being able to like have all those links, those link aggregators where you can have like, spell everything out and show people, where they can find your stuff. It's totally become so much easier to like market yourself, to create, to tell stories and to get them out in the world. And now it's just a problem of like whether there's just too much out there to watch or too much out there to consume. And then it's, I remember like when people were so excited that the streaming networks came out, Netflix, Amazon Prime came out. What else was out there? Like Peacock, Hulu, like, all these things. And people like me who are making shows were amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is great. Like these people need what I'm making. Like, this is an extra avenue of potential revenue generation and another outlet to reach, audiences. But then they just kind of went the same way as all the television broadcasters went.
And of course now all the ads are coming back. So the one thing that is like, oh, watch whatever you want without ads. Amazon Prime just announced advertisements are coming. Netflix is coming with advertisements. It's funny how we're literally just looping back to how it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't even get that. Like, because for a long time, I think Amazon Prime members didn't have to watch ads, and now Prime members will get ads, and then it's like an extra what, like $30 a month or $20 a month to skip the ads. I don't know. I've got my computer in front of me. I should look it up instead of just talking. But yeah, no, I saw that. That's we are like all the streaming partners are gonna just have advertising now, and then that's
And
just gonna be it.
it's, and they're all getting so exorbitantly expensive now. It's like having whatever your 10, 12 different streaming platforms is the cost of a cable package.
But they're bundling.
And they're bundling, which is essentially again a cable package.
they're they're bundling. They're bundling and they're suffering. Like
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like yeah, like there's just too many streaming platforms. There's gonna be some mergers and acquisitions at some stage.
and it's still hard to find something good to watch.
Is it?
I don't know.
What are you watching these days?
Um, let's see. So I had never watched Friends. I think it was out of
Hold on.
I think it was out of a little bit of like, wanting to be, you know, like a little different, want to be a little edgy, be like, oh, never seen Friends before. Don't know anything about it. And, with age, I think I've lost some of that contrarian nature.
Just being random for no reason.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
And I cracked into Friends recently, and I gotta say, I get it.
Well, rest in peace, Matthew
Mhm.
Perry. Yeah, no, that was so you missed out on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
So like I remember NBC Thursday nights. It was Seinfeld and Friends back to back. I don't know which one came first, but it was like 8 p.m. was Friends and 9 p.m. was Seinfeld for like a decade. And everyone watched because you couldn't watch it. It didn't come on VHS. There was no streaming. Like you actually had to like grab food, sit your ass down on Thursday nights and just watch 2 hours of what ended up being probably two of the most successful sitcoms of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still to this day.
Still
Yeah.
to this day.
Which reminds me, speaking of talking about like the transition of physical media, I saw Best Buy just announced they are not going to sell DVDs or Blu-rays at Best Buy anymore. Completely.
What's Best Buy?
But we have a Canadian here. Best Buy is like our major national electronics store.
Okay.
So every mall in America has a Best Buy.
Like a GameStop?
Yeah, kind of like, but a more inclusive. You can buy a washing machine at a Best Buy, but you can also buy a MacBook, and you can also buy the Sopranos box set.
I remember. What do I remember? I remember Radio Shack.
Yeah, so it basically, the other one was Circuit City, and Best Buy for some reason just outlasted them all, and it's where like you'd go find your favorite cartoon, have the box set,
Oh wow.
and you'd go buy it. And now they officially announced, they want to have more space for drones and headphones and stuff like that, so you can no longer buy DVDs and Blu-rays at Best Buy.
So now it's all just DJI and what Beats by Dre or whatever the
Exactly.
headphone company is at the moment, right?
Exactly.
That's wild. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why would, yeah, I mean, you can get all that stuff online, right? And you can still buy on Amazon, you can still buy like DVD packs and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
There's a LA, it's they have a little bit of everything. This is such a movie city, um, that we still have DVD rental stores here. I have a friend who's
Are you serious?
is a diehard Blu-ray watcher, and so he goes to shout out to Vidiots.
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 Like idiots with video?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Vidiots?
Vidiots. They do a lot of cool screenings there, but I have a friend who goes and picks up a few DVDs once a week and returns them next week.
I feel like that should be like a Kevin Smith movie,
Yeah,
like narrative. Remember those guys? Yeah, the guys working at the quickie shop, and they had the DVD, like the video shop next door. And Silent J worked at the video shop, and then yes, so Silent Bob, and what was Jay's name?
Just Jay, right?
Was it just Jay?
Jay.
Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay and Silent Bob save the universe. So I love Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Hey, the original podcaster.
Yeah, truly.
Let's give a shout out to Kevin Smith.
Paved the way for, you can't walk down the street without seeing 10 podcasters in Los Angeles. Kevin Smith paved the way.
He did. Shout out to what was that thing that everyone was selling on their early podcasts? The that sex machine. What was it called? Like all of them. They all peddled them. That was the only people that would sponsor the podcast. Is the fleshlights. I was watching an old Joe Rogan podcast from like 2010 the other day. I can't remember who the guest was, and he was, and like there were 3 breaks in the podcast, and he was advertising fleshlights. It's amazing, and I remember Kevin Smith doing that too.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And now you can, every major company in America advertises podcasts.
Yeah, it's really grown. We still don't have any advertising yet. I'm working on it.
We'll get there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Me and the other 10 podcasters walking down the street in Los Angeles.
Yeah, exactly. It's competitive out here.
It is. Okay, so back to you.
Yeah.
So you're losing your mind in New York City as a freshman. You're loving it, partying all the time. But did you learn anything?
Oh, I learned a lot, and it's just such a, it's the advantage of getting like a silly arts degree is that you don't have to focus too much on the important things like math and science. You just get to focus on writing and making films with your friends. And I met people in the first week of college who I still work with professionally to this day. Zach Romeo, another Ryan Pyle Productions alum.
Zach's the man.
He
introduced me to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Someone I met when I was 18 years old at NYU.
I think I hired Zach when he was like 19 to do like some part-time work in between his studies.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just like learned so much, but even more importantly, met people that I'm still working with. And I think Hollywood for the most part is and video and everything is for the most part a meritocracy. It's not like a law firm that only hires Harvard graduates. For the most part.
Way to sneak in the plot line for Suits, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's literally what I was thinking of when I said that.
Yeah.
Harvey Specter. But for the most part, no one gives a shit where you went to college. So it's like it's the connections that I made on the way.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth all the student debt,
which I'm still paying off.
Yep.
No, but I think that's I think that's a hugely important thing that you just said, because I think like when you go to a massive university like I did, University of Toronto, there was like 60,000 students like across 3 campuses. Like you didn't know anyone, you didn't make any real friends. Like you had acquaintances. Maybe if you lived in a dorm, you knew people like that lived with you and stuff like that. But you didn't like really meet people in your classes because there were like hundreds of people. So it was really isolating. And obviously going to a good school is nice, like to have that alumni network and to be able to go back and maybe do some talks or do that kind of thing. But I don't think I've ever worked with anyone that I met at the University of Toronto. Like I think some of these like smaller schools where you do like really specific degrees, like these are people that you really connect with and you work with again like over decades. Like I think what was it like Martin Scorsese like went to NYU
He
and
did.
still works with like everyone that he went to school with or something
And
like that.
he taught an NYU course that Oliver Stone was in, which I always thought was interesting. It was a class that I took at NYU
Yeah.
decades later.
How amazing is that?
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Which was also just exciting for me too, just again being from rural Northern California where I didn't know anyone in the industry, and a lot of my classmates maybe were from Los Angeles or from kind of entertainment families. It was cool having that being like, yeah, in this building, like Spike Lee is teaching a class upstairs,
Right.
like, all these cool graduates, and of course all the coolest ones dropped out. I used to tell my parents that all the time. Be like, well, all the coolest people dropped out of NYU.
You were
So
just preparing them for
yeah,
your eventual
exactly.
dropped out, not expelled.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a difference. There's a difference.
Exactly.
No, for sure. So it's a 4-year degree at NYU, but like, what to do? Do you specialize in anything, or did you just take like a whole gamut of stuff?
Yeah, you take a whole gamut. People kind of specialize unofficially by picking their courses later in the degree where you focus, and I focused on writing and directing primarily, and yeah, and then they throw you out in the world, and people realize that it's really, really hard to get a job
Yeah,
making good money doing this.
yeah. I think the entertainment industry is pretty ruthless, and that whole what was it like? I just remember like the mid 2010s. It was like the um was like the volunteer assistant and the volunteer personal assistant and like there were all these people who just wanted to be in the entertainment industry
And I
who
did that.
you did that? You
Yeah,
were an unpaid assistant?
I was an intern that
Unpaid intern, that's the
an unpaid intern that was doing a lot of personal assistant work. Say there was some laundry
some
being
laundry,
picked
some
up.
dry cleaning.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Get some cat food, feed the cats.
exactly.
Oh my God. So what was your crowning achievement of being at NYU? What was your like did you prepare a thesis? Did you make a movie? What was like the thing that you had to do before you could leave basically?
Yeah, so I think it's they don't force you to do a thesis film or anything like that, because by the end of the 4 years, I think a lot of people discover it's like, what, I'm not a filmmaker. I think there's a quote from Morgan Spurlock, the guy who did Super Size Me, did those documentaries of that era.
I love Morgan
Yeah,
Spurlock. Yeah, he got into a bit of trouble back in the day with the whole Me Too thing, I think.
yeah,
But I his stuff was wonderful. I
and it
watched it
was
all the time. He had some CNN. He had a CNN show, I think,
yeah, he
as
did
well.
where he would do something like crazy.
Mm.
I remember one episode was he lived on food stamps for like a month or something like that. But
Because he was telling American stories, right? That's
yes,
right.
exactly.
What was the name of that
I
show?
can't remember.
Yeah.
But he had a quote that he was like, um, "I met a lot of people at NYU that became really good accountants," and I think that was something. So a lot of people learn, myself included, that it's not everyone gets to be a famous filmmaker.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so they don't make you do a thesis. I did a film that,
Oh, Morgan Spurlock did the Super Size Me. Yeah, I was
yes,
just checking this out. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah. I remember him now.
which
He's
was
got the
I
handlebar
was such a
mustaches.
such a like radical movie at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did make like a kind of junior thesis film, and yeah, ended up
Called Santa Baby, just to
yeah,
bring it back full circle.
yep, Santa Baby.
It was yeah, ingrained in my brain.
And yeah, and then I think I basically moved out to LA while I was still at NYU. Actually, I hadn't even graduated. I moved out to LA and was like taking courses remotely.
Oh,
Did like some internships and came out and was working at the LA REI and doing internships and finishing my courses online.
why was that? You just wanted to be back in California, or you just wanted to be like where it all happens?
I think it was ready to like get into it. I think I got an opportunity through the school to do some internships and get credit for it.
Yeah,
And I was like, well, the college part of it's always been the second thing. Of course, I want a degree. That's nice, but that's not why I'm here.
mm.
And so, and yeah, jumped in head first and moved right out to LA. with a bunch of people that I
That's
had met at NYU.
yeah.
Like,
With Zach. Zach was
yeah,
one of your first roommates. I
yeah,
remember too. Yeah.
exactly.
So that's and Zach was already working for me at that stage. I think.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was.
when
I
you
remember
guys
that.
moved out to California. Wow. Okay. So you're in California. You've got a shiny piece of paper from NYU that cost you, I'm guessing, a shit ton.
Yeah,
So,
lots of zeros.
so how long is it before you land like a job that allows you to live a semi decent life in LA?
Well, I unfortunately got a job doing the Hollywood assistant thing pretty much right off the bat. Got to skip the whole, a lot of friends went into being an agent's assistant or working in the mailroom, and I remember I bought a suit. So I was like, maybe I don't own a suit. Maybe I'm going to go work at an agency.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that never happened. Um,
But this was before Entourage and before Ari Gold made being an agent
no, this
awesome.
this was this was this was after. So it was or during or after. So there was a little cachet.
Yeah.
But I got a job as
Uh,
a Hollywood assistant.
As an aside, how good was Entourage?
I actually haven't. Again, this is the contrarian coming out. Never seen Entourage.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Oh my god, you have to watch it.
yeah,
It's fantastic. It's on it's still on HBO. Like
yeah,
they still have it. And I really want them to like reopen
yeah.
that
Bring it back.
the movies they make, the Entourage movies they make are terrible. Like they need to come back and like bring the whole series back cuz like Vincent Chase at like 45 or 50 trying to like work through this like midlife career. I just want to see more Johnny drama. Like
Yeah,
these characters are iconic with this town.
yeah,
I think
truly.
so, yeah.
And it's funny navigating living here, not getting all the Entourage references. I was nodding my head, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that part too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But
Okay, so you had a suit.
I so fortunately got to skip the agency and was the classic Hollywood producer's assistant for a few years, simultaneously driving Uber because the secret that a lot of people don't know about Hollywood is no one makes any money unless you're at the top. So I was making $30,000 a year and working 10 to 12 hours a day and then driving Uber when I got home.
Jesus.
Yeah,
That's intense.
yeah,
And like yeah, because you can't live on $30,000 a day
no,
in this city.
yeah.
What's that like? You can't like
And
you'd have to
obviously
get like
this was a decade ago, but even then that wasn't very much money.
yeah. No, that's wild. Like I'm just trying to think like if you had $30,000 a year over 12 months, like your rent would you couldn't have more than
30,000 pre-taxes.
free taxes, and of course California has very high taxes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and I did it, and that kind of, I haven't left LA since. Been here for a decade now, and um, have gotten the chance to work in just about every part of film and TV and video.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, now let's get into us.
Yeah.
When did So I first met you through Zach because I was looking for a producer to help me manage some of my shows, manage some of the pitching, because things were getting really crazy and really busy in 2018 and 2019. And that was when you started working for me, maybe as a freelancer,
Exactly.
doing some projects on an hourly basis, helping me put together decks, helping me reach out to people, make some presentations about shows that I wanted to make. Boy, how that was fun, wasn't it?
That was fun.
2018 and 2019.
Yeah, and the getting to cook up ideas for shows and work on those pitch materials. You know, that's the fun part.
Mostly just drinking at the bar at the Waldorf.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
that was a good time too. Yeah, and then I think we had quite a lot going on because there was a lot of stuff. Saudi Arabia was opening up.
Yep.
There was a lot of opportunity to potentially tell stories about Saudi Arabia, as controversial as that might be. I really wanted to do it because I wanted to learn firsthand what was going on in the country, not just listen to third parties tell me what was going on. And I wanted to see and talk to all the people and actually be there and judge it for myself, right? So
Yeah.
I was very excited to have the chance to work in film in Saudi Arabia. And then I remember, I think it was like December 2019. I think I hired you full time.
Yeah. It was. Yep. I think that's about right. It might have even. I remember I didn't. I think I was working some freelance things because I remember quitting um, all my other freelance film hustles to work with you the week in March, the week that everything shut down.
Right. So I think you were still, yeah, you were still working on a few other projects, and then you were working on some stuff for me. And then, yeah, first week of March, because I was supposed to start filming in Saudi Arabia like the end of March, and I think that I had figured out that I needed to hire you full time to help me get through all of, because I think I had literally about 3 years worth of projects
Yeah.
that I had lined up, and financially it was going to be amazing, and work wise it was going to be far too much for me to manage on my own. Yeah, yeah. First week of March, 2020.
Wow.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Wow. Back when COVID was just some rumors about something going on in China.
Well, I remember I remember December 2019. I remember filming in Hong Kong. And people were wearing masks and stuff like that because of because I think COVID, there were like murmurings of like flu in China, but but in Hong Kong at that time there was a massive protest, so the protests took priority over COVID at all. And then I remember going back to Dubai, and then in January I was in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and then I did a big driving trip all around Saudi Arabia. That was beautiful. Actually, I wanted to see Saudi Arabia for myself, and I did that. And then I went to Myanmar in February, and that I remember going through the Bangkok airport. So I flew Dubai to Bangkok, switched planes, and then went to which city did I fly to in Myanmar? I can't remember. Rangoon, and then we landed, and I just remember everyone in the Bangkok airport had a mask on, and
Mm.
that was the first time I was like, oh, this is getting pretty hectic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The beginning scene of, or it's the scene in whatever like pandemic zombie apocalypse movie where everyone's freaking out at the airport.
Yeah, at the airport. And then yeah, after that, after I filmed in Myanmar, I went back, and then you and I were planning, and I even was planning to have you come out to Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
like come out to Dubai to like help me just to be in the same time zone to get all this work done. And then I went to Ethiopia, and then the
Yeah.
world closed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What was it like being here, like in that kind of second, third week of March 2020?
Yeah. It was funny because it was, we all felt at that time, this can be a few weeks top. So it felt like, kind of almost like a vacation. You're so removed from the gravity of it. It's not like millions of people are getting sick. And, I remember everyone was talking about how light the traffic was.
That was the highlight.
That
That
was
was the
what
highlight.
everyone was talking about in LA. Oh man,
COVID.
I got over to the west side in 20 minutes today. Yeah,
Man, that's how what unremoved
yeah,
Californians are
yeah,
from what's going on in the rest of the world. That the talk of the day was traffic.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fair enough though. LA traffic's awful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's truly horrible.
yeah.
How's that been for you so far?
I just live in this like I live in this like 1 mile square block, and I don't leave.
Yeah.
And so far so good.
That's my best way I've found to deal with it too. Is just don't leave the small area you live in.
Yeah, and it's amazing because like I still love pressing the flesh. Like I want to meet people for a drink. I want to shake hands. I want to give people hugs. I want to catch up with people I haven't seen in years. And everyone just wants to have a fucking Zoom call with me.
Yeah,
It's driving me nuts. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm here, man.
yeah,
Like we were doing Zoom calls when I was in China or when I was in
yeah,
Dubai or when I was filming somewhere. But I'm a mile from your office, and there's a bar a block away from you. Like, let's just have a drink. And they're
yeah,
like, no, Zoom, Monday, 11 a.m. or something. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, where did that's where the creative juices come from. It's like meeting people face to face, like maybe not having a drink or some tea or whatever, but like that's the creative process demands human contact,
yeah.
unless you're living in the woods and writing the great American novel.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Collaboration, like in-person collaboration, is so important.
It is, yeah. I don't like people might come up with ideas on their own, but to flesh them out and turn them into like real projects, or to turn them into like an actual script, or like you need support, you need people to bounce ideas off of along the way, and to think like we can all just sit in our homes and do Zoom calls, like, and still create like the magic that we once did, I think is really naive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of psychology work being done, talking about like the way that we just like pick up on each other's subtle cues and stuff, reading each other's faces. It's different when it's through a screen and delayed and
Yeah.
distorted.
Like that woman doing Santa Baby
Yeah,
in her garage would
wouldn't
not
have
have been as traumatic and affected your entire life
exactly
if
wouldn't
it
have
was
set me on this path.
if it was on an Instagram if it was on an Instagram square.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh my God, you're gonna regret telling me that story forever.
Oh,
Okay, so I hire you full time, and then somehow you decided to tank your career with me, and you launched COVID into the world.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm over it. I broke into the lab and, and unleashed the virus. It was
Uh,
me. This is a
you heard it
first.
here
Yeah,
first. Yeah. Okay, so then I get stuck in Istanbul for 4 months.
yeah,
Yeah, that was terrible.
yeah.
Yeah,
But you got a cat out of it.
I got a cat out of it. Yeah, a little whiskey, which was great. But I just remember, I remember how I remember the first lockdown when I was in Istanbul. So for those of us who don't know, I was in Ethiopia filming because I wanted to get into Africa because Africa wasn't going to close their borders. It was business as usual. It was wonderful. I got into Ethiopia. It was great. The people were amazing. The food. Got up to the Simeon Mountains. Breathtaking scenery. Daoud, my guide, was awesome. We're living in tents. We're climbing through this Simeon Mountain National Park, and then I'm offline for like 2 days, and then I get up to the top of the mountain, and the world's closed. I'm a resident of Dubai. I can't go back to Dubai. United Arab Emirates closed their borders to non-passport holders. Yeah, I'm still upset about that actually. Like, I was a business owner and a property owner and a legal resident of Dubai, and then I couldn't go back, and that really pissed me off. And then I didn't want to go back to Canada and like live in my brother's basement for however long this was going to go. So Turkey was open, so I just flew to Istanbul. It was a city I loved, a city I was familiar with, and it was pretty reasonably priced. So if I did have to stay there for a long time, like getting stuck in Istanbul is way better than getting stuck in like Singapore or Tokyo or New York, right? So at least it was. But I had no idea I was going to be there for 4 fucking months.
What was the atmosphere like there? Was it people out in the streets? Were people wearing masks?
Um, so the Turkish government played it really cool. They shut down bars and restaurants. They shut down everything actually, except for pharmacies and grocery stores. But government services still ran, and people were out on the streets like walking. Like some people, like you would see some people at the grocery store, like stocking up for like a year and like getting a big van and putting food in, like who just didn't want to go out. But I made an absolute um, promise to myself that I was going to go outside every day. So every day I went to the pharmacy, even though I didn't need anything every day. And then every day I went to the grocery store and picked up something for lunch and dinner or whatever. And I just went out and walked every day. And then as things started to open up, I would go on like really long, like 5, 10, 20-kilometer walks all around Istanbul. For people who don't know Istanbul, it's absolutely huge. There's like 35 million people there. And and so I would go on these massive walks and then take a taxi home because you could, right? So, compared to that first lockdown of like people I knew who were in Dubai, because the first lockdown in Dubai was militant, and then they totally opened up and they were like, "This is a joke. Like we're not ruining our entire tourism industry and our entire economy for this anymore." So and then when I ended up getting back to Dubai, that was great because Dubai was totally open, and that's why I stayed there for as long as I did, for as many years as I did, um, because the second lockdown was the one that killed me. Yeah,
That was the one later in 2020. Was that?
yeah. So that was the one you were with me on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So for people who don't know, like, I hired you full time, and then I got stuck in Turkey, but we were still working. Like we were, I was that first lockdown, I was like super positive. I was super motivated. I was like, okay, this is going to be like 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever. I remember actually, I was at the Hilton Hotel on the Bosphorus. That was like the first place I stayed was the St. Regis, and they closed and kicked me out. I was the only guest. And they're like, "Sir, we would never ask you to leave, but we're closing the hotel. Do you mind leaving?" And I was like, "Yeah, I get it. No worries." And I was like, "Which hotel like is not going to close?" And they said the Hilton. They stay open during like revolutions and coups and stuff. And I was like, "Okay, that's the place for me." So they put me up in like a presidential suite. They charged me very little money, which was very nice of them. Um, but then you watch the news every day, and it's just like 2 weeks, oh, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks. So I was just booking at the Hilton for 2 weeks at a time. But the whole time I was still chatting with you. Um, I had done 2 or 3 episodes of Extreme Trek, so I was working with David, my editor, in New Zealand. Like he was still editing, I was still doing notes and stuff. I was working with you. The Saudi stuff, I guess, was still kind of happening. Like I felt like that first lockdown was super fun, super positive, and we were working like right
Yeah,
through it.
yeah. That was when I think you had kind of been percolating on the idea of the nomad for a while,
Oh yeah,
and that was when you were like, this is an opportunity to make this happen.
to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, so the for to relive that moment. Yeah, stuck in Istanbul. I was doing COVID calls
Hmm.
every day with friends and people around, in just to like stay connected to the rest of the world. And then yeah, you and I were putting shows together.
Yeah.
Because I think I believed like somewhere around like April May, it looked like Europe was going to reopen fully,
Hmm.
and the rest of the world was still pretty shaky. So I asked you to work with me to put together some shows in Europe, right? So we did extreme treks in Switzerland. We walked across Switzerland. Then we did extreme treks in Poland, Tatra Mountains, which was great. And then yeah, we came up with the Nomad, and then we executed. We did Heidelberg, we did Malta, we did Dubrovnik, and then we did Kotar, Montenegro.
Yeah.
And then that was the second lockdown, November
Yep.
2020, where we almost spent the winter in Montenegro.
Yeah. No, it was close. And I remember up until the last moment, we were working on more episodes. We were making plans about, are we going to Serbia? We were talking about going to Belgrade.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then it was just like I remember talking to people on the ground in some of the places we were considering, and they were like, the restaurants are closed again. Like,
yeah.
and especially for shows like that where it's all about the interesting people you meet. You're not allowed to go out and meet anyone. What's the show?
What's the show? Yeah, I remember in Valletta in Malta, we interviewed a Michelin star chef. His name escapes me. Wonderful man, really wonderful chef, and very hospitable. We interviewed this chef, and then his restaurant closed the next day because like one of his waiters or servers got COVID, and then his restaurant was closed for like 2 weeks. And I'm just like, Jesus, like how many places are just going to go bankrupt? Like
Yeah.
this just makes no sense. But I remember working with you, um, and I remember doing the extreme trek stuff, and then I remember doing some of the nomad stuff. But do you remember the conversation we had about you coming to Europe?
I think so. I remember there was some finagling to do because you're way more accustomed to this than I am. I was like, this stuff is so much more nebulous online than you think it would be. You think there would just be a list online that's like where Americans can go.
Right.
Let's go. But these are the countries you can go to. It's
Mm.
not that simple. And so it's checking all the different embassy websites, being like, okay, could I come join you guys in Malta? No, they're not letting Americans in.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like how nothing made sense for years.
yeah. And then I think it was eventually you were like, I think you had said, oh, it looks like Croatia would let you in.
Well, yeah, because the EU wouldn't let you in,
Yeah,
but Croatia in 2020 wasn't part of the EU Schengen visa zone.
yeah,
So Croatia was, and Croatia actually stayed open almost all through COVID, and a lot of people filmed in Croatia.
yeah.
They did, while we were there, remember? They were doing the Nicolas Cage movie, about the massive talent one.
Oh, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember with the guy from The
Pedro
Mandalorian,
Pascal.
Pedro
Yeah,
Pascal?
good movie. Yeah,
It's one of my favorites, actually.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
That unbearable weight of massive talent.
yeah. That was such a fun movie. Yeah, the amount of things that are filmed in Dubrovnik is truly wild. just be watching TV and be like, oh, yep, there it is.
Well, Game of Thrones. Tell me you at least watch Game of
Of
Thrones.
course, I've seen Game of Thrones.
Well, you
I
haven't seen
actually,
Friends. That's not a given.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. So yeah, I got to join you guys. I remember at the tail end of filming in Dubrovnik. I came on, I think, literally showed up as you guys were wrapping the last interview you had done. I pulled up to where you guys were filming.
Yeah, but the great story is that I didn't know until you arrived in Dubrovnik that you'd never been outside the United States.
Yep. Yep. And so
That's awesome.
that was and then during COVID, so it's like I had a layover in JFK. I literally was the only non-employee in JFK. Like literally, I think they left a Sabaro's pizza open, so I was me and the janitors were getting pizza together, but literally the only person.
Yeah.
And
What kind of asshole asks you to travel during COVID? Yeah, I guess me, because we had work to do. Like
Yeah.
I just like you either want to get out and get back into the living normal life, or you just want to hunker down and do nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was there was no lack of people who wanted to meet you and be a part of the show, and um, you know, governmental organizations who wanted to help us make it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We got a lot of our funding. You helped me arrange a lot of the funding with the tourism bureaus of Malta. I remember they were really nice. Poland helped us with the Tatras, and then Montenegro. Yeah. But that was we put all that together while I was locked down in Istanbul.
Yeah. So that was I tell people about getting to do this trip because it was such a awesome experience for me. Whatever the 2 months I was on the road with you guys, in Croatia, Montenegro, and eventually Dubai.
Mm-hmm. We got to talk about how we ended up in Dubai. We'll get to that in a bit, but keep going.
It was just such a cool thing as someone who's like never left the United States outside of Canada.
Your 51st state.
Yeah, exactly. I got to, you guys took a break, in between episodes. I got to spend a week, kind of doing little pre-interviews and meeting people that we were doing for maybe not a week, but a few days, getting to meet all the people that we were going to interview. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like a cool crash course in being in
field production.
Yeah, field production, and being in a place where not everyone speaks English. New experience to me.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that was wild. I remember. So because when I left Istanbul, all I wanted to do was get back to work, and I just remember I wanted to get the whole crew back together. Chad, my director of photography, was in Canada, even though he was living in Bali. After we left Ethiopia, he couldn't go back to Indonesia because Indonesia had closed their borders, so he ended up going back to Canada. Jesse Rosenberg wasn't with us in Ethiopia, but he was in California. He was my second camera operator. And all I wanted to do was like get the guys back and start, filming right away. And I remember leaving Istanbul being like, I hope I can film for 12 straight months. Like that was the goal, right? Like, and I remember working with you, like reaching out, being like, okay, like how do we, keep this going? Okay, we got Switzerland, and the tourism bureau helped us there too. Got Poland, we got Heidelberg, Germany, Malta. Like where's next? And I remember every night finishing filming, and then getting back to the hotel or the apartment and going through your notes from the day, being like, oh, we might have a chance here, we might have a chance there. And then I was like, well, just come to Croatia so that we can do this face to face, and you can help put this stuff together for me. And when you got to Croatia, Montenegro was your first and only episode, but we had probably 3 or 4 more planned after that. I remember.
Yeah, that was wild. Just like, and that feeling of that, like, okay, we're making this work. Like you were, had to essentially from Switzerland through Montenegro, done like 6+ episodes of television. Like you had made it work. Yeah. And it seemed like your plan of keeping it going was going to work until, it was our last couple of weeks in Montenegro. It just kind of all started to fall apart again.
It did. It did. You know what? I remember this. I remember this so clearly, and I want to know if you feel the same way or you remember it in the same way. But I remember being in Montenegro, and you were great. You were helping with pre-production. You were meeting, doing pre-interviews with everyone, trying to find the narratives that we wanted to flesh out, locations for the interviews, and the right bar, the right restaurant, the right. Remember that arms guy that had all
God,
those
yeah.
old weapons in his. You got to edit a clip into that. But I just remember filming in Montenegro, in Kotar, Montenegro, every day, and obviously we were all watching the news and had our apps up and stuff. And I just remember the world was just getting closing in on us. Like Europe, like the UK was closing, the US was starting to close again, borders in the US closed again. Like everything was just getting tighter. And I just remember this, it was almost like suffocating, um, like claustrophobia, being in Montenegro, filming in this beautiful place with wonderful people. And I remember like I just remember having this feeling one. Yeah, actually, you know what it was? Remember my mom was there too. So we were. I remember you were with us one night, and we went to the Porto Montenegro, and we were having a few drinks and watching the sunset, which was beautiful. Maybe we were filming there too. I don't know. And I just remember like I think I said out loud, like I was like, we might not be able to leave Montenegro.
Yeah. We were starting to brainstorm some plans. All right, okay, we have to wait out the winter in Montenegro. What are we going to do? Because I
Yeah,
remember you were staying as everything was shutting down, staying abreast of kind of what flights were still around,
yeah,
um, and just kind of seeing where in the world we could get, and just slowly became less and less and less.
yeah. Like I remember sitting in our apartment because we all had Airbnbs. I just remember sitting in that apartment every night on the balcony, going through my phone, being like, how do we fly out of Montenegro and where can we go next? And and I remember right when it got towards the end of our filming in Montenegro, we were there for 2 weeks filming, and I think like 1 week of just chilling because we were exhausted by the time we got to Montenegro. Um, they had canceled all flights in and out of Montenegro, and then I remember I started to get really worried when they closed the land borders between Croatia and Montenegro, which is how we went from Dubrovnik down to Montenegro. And then I remember after Montenegro, we were going to go to Belgrade, Serbia, and do an episode there. And then Serbia closed their borders to Montenegro, and this was like mid-November 2020, and we couldn't escape Montenegro by land or air.
Yep.
That was a wild that was a wild feeling. And I remember looking into the company bank account, being like, how do I get my 6 people that I'm responsible for out of
And all
Montenegro?
your the behind the scenes secret of Ryan Pyle Productions is the something 40 or 50 bags of camera equipment
Yeah,
that accompany the production.
yeah, sure. I mean, people have to understand like we travel with like 200 kg, which is what, like 400 pounds
Yeah.
of equipment, like, and our extra baggage expenses are massive every year, but as they are for any productions, right? And yeah, I just remember, yeah, like I was like, can we get from Montenegro back into Africa? Like, can we go to Namibia or some other country that might be open where we can find out how to make a beautiful episode doing something? Like, I just wanted to keep working, and I remember how broken my spirit was when that the second lockdown, November 2020, and us having to like escape back to Dubai, um, and then just hunker down, and then nothing for like years.
Truly,
Yeah,
it was that was a very weird time.
yeah. The second lockdown broke me way more than the first one, because the first one I was super pumped and like I was still planning, right? But when the second lockdown hit, I was like, oh my god, this is going to happen every winter. Like, how do you plan? How do you plan to do 10 episodes a year when you can only film in the summer? Yeah, and if we're not doing 8 or 10 episodes a year, like my company can't make any money because we have to, like, if we hire the whole team, like we need volume, right? Like we got to be traveling all the time to make stuff, and that was very much like the way we set things up, and it was working really well.
Yeah, and I remember in Montenegro, our kind of nightly whiskey brainstorming session started getting a lot darker. You know,
A lot
the
dark.
the mood definitely shifted.
Yeah, I remember that too. And yeah, those were tough times.
You got us out of Montenegro. We didn't make it out.
By private jet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That so for those who weren't there, which is everyone. Yeah, we had to charter a private plane to get the six of us and a cat and yeah, 200 kg, 400 pounds worth of camera equipment out of Montenegro. And literally the only place we could fly to was Dubai. Yeah.
I remember that was such a cool experience for me to get to fly on the jet. I remember Dan, our other cameraman, and I were like
Yeah.
quite excited about it. So we went to the one grocery store in Kotor, Montenegro, and we were like, well, we have to drink champagne.
Yeah.
Of course,
Naturally.
we're going to be on a private plane. So we buy, one bottle of champagne. It's like €100 bottle of Moet that's like on the back top shelf, covered in dust. And we're like, all right, let's do it. We split it. We get it for the plane. Remember, we go through security. They try to stop us from bringing it on.
The airport was closed. Remember?
Yeah,
like we were the only reason
there, they had to bring people for it. They're like, oh, you obviously can't bring a full bottle of alcohol. And I remember because it's private plane, the pilot's like, no, it's all right, and takes it and walks around the security thing with it.
Yeah.
We're so excited. First thing we get on the plane, the flight attendant's like, oh, would you like some champagne? And it is the exact same brand, the same bottle that we had got from our dusty Montenegro shelf.
Yeah, they treated us nice on that flight. Yeah. But my like if we didn't break the bank by doing that flight, we would have been in Montenegro all winter.
Yeah,
like November, December, January, February, March, April, probably.
Yeah,
and what would we have done? We just would have been totally stuck there.
Yeah.
I was just glad that everyone could get home from Dubai.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we got to Dubai, we were like, okay, maybe we can do some filming in Dubai, or maybe Oman will open their borders, and they never did. And then Saudi Arabia was closed for years. Like that was not an option. Like there was nothing to do, and we were just stuck on this. Dubai is not an island; it's part of the Arabian Peninsula, but it feels like an island when you're there, and all the land borders are closed because you just can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then we were just stuck, and then eventually we all just went home sad and depressed and not knowing what was going to happen next.
Yeah, it was right before Christmas too. Like a couple weeks before Christmas. A funny way to end the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Do you remember Amazonica? We went out for a nice dinner at Amazonica.
That was
yeah. And then you and Dan, I think, flew home the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's funny, it maybe says something about me that a lot of my memories involve alcohol, but
not at all. That's totally fine. We're gonna start drinking, by the way, soon, so it's all good.
But I remember, getting having some drinks, before I get on my red eye flight. Then as we get on, I order a glass of wine, and they say, "Oh, sir, United Arab Emirates regulations during COVID are that we can only give you single serving containers. We can't open a bottle of wine." So they bring me a whole bottle of wine,
as you deserve,
as I deserve, which I proceeded to drink on my way to my layover in Frankfurt.
Right.
And proceed to be shaken awake by the Lufthansa attendant because I had drank the full bottle of wine on the few-hour flight. And
I remember I think you had a flight like Dubai, Frankfurt, LA, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And like how many people were on that plane? This would have been like December 2020.
Not many. Yeah, not many. I think that was also a cool experience, getting to do international travel for the first time. Is just no one on the plane.
Yeah. I'll take you back in 2002 or 2003. There was like a SARS outbreak in Hong Kong and China, and I remember flying on a Virgin Atlantic flight from London to Hong Kong during SARS, and I think there was like 5 people on the plane, and they just moved us all to business class so they could serve us easier. But I remember the plane just being completely empty. And even during COVID, like I didn't fly a lot during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, we traveled by land a lot because we were in Europe. I remember that. But and Europe travel within Europe, there were still people flying, like
Yeah.
business people were flying, but no, there weren't a lot of tourists. But I just remember being like alone on that Virgin Atlantic flight during SARS. I think it was like 2003 maybe. But that must have been what you felt like.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal.
Yeah.
It's like, and then since having done some international travel now, I know that it's not quite so plush all the time.
No, definitely not. So what was it like for you getting back to LA after your stint of working with me and coming back and yeah, because basically I got shut down
Yeah,
and haven't really gotten back to making television content since. Actually,
yeah,
that was like the last stuff I made. Like, what was it like, kind of being fired,
yeah,
losing your job, and then coming back to
yeah.
LA?
That was definitely a big like pivotal moment for me too, of getting to have this kind of awesome experience of doing it, and then coming back and being like, all right, I guess I'm gonna get a job, in something that's a little bit more COVID proof and um, you
Hold
know,
on, hold on, hold on. COVID proof.
COVID proof.
How crazy is that? That's a thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because yeah, working with me was not COVID proof.
No, exactly. It's like it's kind of comical when it's telling people that like, yeah, got this opportunity to work on a really fun travel show in the heart of COVID, and it's like, oh, why don't you, like, why'd you stop doing it? It's like, well, traveling and making a travel show during COVID is very, very difficult.
Yeah, it
So
was it was hard. Like, and no one really like respected like how really difficult it was to like line all this stuff up. Like people, it's funny. Like some people were like, "Oh my God, you're traveling, you're stupid, you're disrespectful, you're putting other people's lives in danger." Like social media is terrible for stuff like that. Like you post a picture of yourself having a drink in Valletta, Malta, while I'm filming with Chad or something like that,
yeah,
and half of them are like, "Oh, good for you, you're back working," and then the other half are like, "You're putting other people's lives in danger. You're ridiculous. Like, go home, like stay home,
yeah,
shelter." Work from home, all this kind of garbage. And I was just like, no, man, like if I'm gonna die, it's gonna be out on the street talking to people,
yeah,
filming. Like I don't want. I'm not gonna just shelter in my house and wait for the end to happen. Like
yeah,
I want to go down living.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was just it's like, we can look at hindsight is always 2020, but like, man, that was the time people were just so scared, you know.
yeah.
Um,
I had a COVID call about this actually, in 2020 with um, Alan Carl, and he used to make TV shows all the time too. He was a chef. He rode motorcycles all through Europe. He made some really nice shows for Travel Channel and stuff like that. And he's in San Diego, and I chat with him from time to time. And we had a COVID call. I remember in 2020, and it was on Bourdain's. It was on the anniversary of Bourdain's death, which I
mhm,
think is June the 8th, if I'm not mistaken. And he took his own life in 2018, I think. And I just remember like our narrative was like of that interview that we did together was just like, what would Bourdain be saying now?
yeah,
Because for all of us, definitely in the English speaking entertainment audience, like he was the quintessential traveler.
yeah,
So like, what would his opinion be of COVID and these lockdowns, and would he have made it through?
yeah,
Because I barely did.
yeah. That's an interesting question.
Yeah. Like if we still had Bourdain as a talking head sitting in his apartment in New York, not traveling 300 days a year for parts unknown or giving 50 speaking events, a year as well, which he did. Um, what would that have been like, and would it have driven him completely insane? Because it drove me completely insane.
Yeah,
Just the lack of anything going on.
yeah,
Because my speaking career wasn't COVID proof, the travel adventure career wasn't COVID proof, so you just end up sitting around just doing nothing.
which is what led me ultimately to, for better or for worse, commercials are COVID proof.
Commercials.
Commercials.
Okay.
And of course, here in LA, film productions were the first thing to get back up and running because it's the foundation of the city in a lot of ways.
But was it? I mean, was film production COVID proof? Because I saw like from the outside looking in, I saw maybe some film productions getting back, but it was only big budget stuff that could afford all the
Yeah,
COVID PPE garbage and the
yeah,
the different zones, like like you had to stay here if you were doing this, and you had to stay, and you couldn't cross into other people's zones, and like how miserable
Oh
would it
yeah,
have been filming in LA in like 2020?
it was wild. It was wild. I think I didn't get back to filming something until early 2021.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was wild. It was um, you have COVID officers on set, trading people, making sure people aren't sitting too closely, and like wiping down surfaces and everything. It was wild, and it got back into the swing of things long before people were going back into the office for business jobs or whatever.
sure.
And yeah, people kept watching TV, so there needed to be more commercials, and so the commercial industry in LA really like went headfirst into all the COVID precautions, but then somehow managing to still shoot tons of stuff.
Interesting.
I never worked on it, but a lot of people were doing virtual productions where the directors and the clients would be on Zoom.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I went and got a job working at an agency where everyone was getting tested every day.
Every day,
Yeah.
like up the nose.
Those were earlier, and then eventually it switched to the rapid test, which it was a relief.
Yeah.
Um,
I had so many, like, I just couldn't handle having things stuck up. Like, when you think of like the worst possible feeling in the world, it's having something rammed up your nose. And I remember early, a friend of mine um, flew into Dubai, and in Dubai they would they stayed open, but they tested you at the airport. So when you land, they were sticking stuff up your nose, taking your mobile phone number or your email, and then the next day you would get a positive, negative, shelter in place, stay
yeah,
in your hotel, whatever, right? And but they were using like wooden Q-tips. So when they stuck it up your nose, it was like on a wooden stick, and it was rigid, and it wasn't like the soft, like flexible ones that they
yeah,
had it towards the end. And this person who I was close with, um, had this massive bruise
wow,
right here for like a month from this person at the airport. Not a trained nurse, male or female nurse. No, no, just like an airport,
yeah,
like whatever. Just ramming sticks up people's noses. Just pure insanity.
yeah, wild times,
Yeah.
wild times.
So what was some of the commercials you had the chance to work on, or
Oh
what's
man,
can you say, or
yeah. I mean,
yeah?
I can certainly nothing too glamorous, but got to work on lots of different websites like e-commerce, streaming platforms. Um, a lot of appliances. The sexiest stuff,
Yeah,
refrigerators, ovens, that kind of thing.
stuff we all need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stuff we all need, and it's interesting going into the world of commercials because it's funny. I feel like the people who work in commercials, the people who are like journeymen, agency creatives or directors or whatever, a lot of them have this sense of film and television being like more glamorous.
Oh, it's not
And
glamorous at all.
and then I'm like, oh, you work on commercials, like we have the nicest food, and there's someone coming to give massages to the client, and there's like whatever. I'm like, this is not what
That's
I.
why I invited you to Croatia.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
exactly,
massages and
exactly.
yeah, and sushi, right?
Yeah. So the commercial world is more soul sucking, but definitely a lot more cushy.
Sure.
You're not sleeping in different Airbnbs and hotel rooms.
Yeah. And what was the commercial experience like for you? Were you coming from NYU, coming from Santa Baby, coming from your early hits? What was the commercial world fulfilling in it creatively for you?
I think it's you gotta have some perspective on it because I think the 20-year-old me would be like, no, I
I'm
think
selling out.
I think I said actually one time on a set and it didn't go over well. Everyone was getting really stressed on this commercial. The client, the creatives, everyone was getting really flustered. And I said, guys, we need to remember we're not saving lives here. We're making a commercial about coupons for dog food.
And,
Not making a
and
commercial about dog food. We're making a commercial about coupons for dog food. people who devoted their life to it didn't really think that joke was very funny.
How do you devote your life to coupons for dog food? Like,
Just
yeah, I mean,
devote their life to selling things, I guess.
yeah, yeah, just selling whatever you can, right?
Yeah. And so, in some ways, yeah, it's like, you're not making stuff that you're inherently passionate about. But then if you take a step back and think about all the things you can do in the world, it's like I get to be creative.
Yeah.
I get to meet people. I get to do interesting things. And it's like in that sense, it's I'd pick it over a million other things.
Yeah, that's true. Were there at least dogs on the set?
There was dogs on almost all of them. There's almost always a dog.
In LA, everyone has a
Yeah.
dog.
And the dog wranglers are a whole world into its own. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
We should do a documentary about that.
That would be, and the COVID, a COVID documentary about dog handlers would be interesting because a few of these companies that do this, they'll have like a big ranch up in, Ventura or like outside of the city, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they'll have, a bunch of dogs, lizards, horses, birds, all this on this huge ranch.
Yeah, they diversify. They have like the whole animal gambit,
They
not
have
just
everything,
yeah.
and like obviously dogs are the bread and butter, but they have everything out there. And I talked to some of them, and this was on the tail end of the more serious COVID stuff. They were like, they were all sitting like we just had to take care of all these animals like on this ranch. They weren't earning money.
There was no work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just like it essentially became a zoo for 2 years. Out of work parrots.
Oh my God. With Matt Damon and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah,
Did they
exactly.
buy a zoo or something like that? Wasn't that a movie?
Yeah, we bought a zoo.
We bought a zoo.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I mean, at least you got back and were able to keep doing some work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep and still get to do, found opportunities to collaborate with you on some stuff and cooking up some ideas. Always working on fun and other stuff while hustling.
Yeah. It's funny, I've tried now with your help, like we've been kind of doing some freelance work together for the last couple months. Like I've been trying to get back into adventure filming, and it's amazing just how hard it is. And I want to jump out and say that um, the inflation that we've had in costs of travel have made what I used to do in 2018, 2019, well, 2016, 17, 18, 19, have made what I used to do on the budgets that I used to do it on pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
Because I would say that from 2018 to where we are now, like traveling all around the world the way we did, like, tickets are 2 to 3 times more expensive. Hotels are 2 to 3 times more expensive. And everyone's like trying to make up for the fact they didn't make any money in 2020, 2021, 2022. And the price gouging has been unbelievable. Because I remember we were making a presentation, you and I was trying to like just do some rough numbers, and it just didn't make any sense to try to do like a 46-minute television episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different landscape now.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Yeah.
Like I thought like my old life of traveling 300 days a year is temporarily on hiatus. I still have hope of getting back out there because and again, like I use Bourdain a lot in my motivations because he was 46 or 47 when he wrote Kitchen Confidential.
Wow.
Which was a New York Times bestseller, which launched his book, his writing career and his television career and his speaking career. But he was like 46 or 47 when he did all that, and I'm not even there yet, and I've already made like 50 hours worth of television. So if I have to take like a year or two off,
so maybe now you at 47 should become a professional chef.
So that's the connection you made. Okay, good one. Because I eat out of a bag on the side of a mountain living in a tent, and I have no culinary taste at all.
Yeah. I'm sure you've eaten some pretty interesting things while on the side of a mountain.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone wrote me the other day and was like, "Ah ha ha! I just watched your Morocco episode, like goat eyeballs. Like I had to eat goat eyeballs, and I remember putting them in my mouth, and you would just crush them, and then the eye goo would just slide into the back of your.
Oh, That's like Fear Factor.
It's disgusting. Yeah, we need Rogan.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's on the agenda for you in 2024? We're in January.
Yeah.
We're on the cusp of a new year. This is my new project. I want to make friends in LA. I want to just take all of my lifetime of international experience and bring it back here and have good conversations with people. But what are you thinking for 2024?
Yeah, I think for me it's about getting together people I like working with,
Yeah.
and following the Ryan Pyle model and just getting out there and making stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's things have changed, but there's still, you got a camera, you got some people to hold it, you can make some cool stuff.
Yeah.
So that's my goal this year.
Well, I'm pleasantly surprised that that like YouTube, for example, is charging people $16 a month for ad free. Because I think if you love making, if you love storytelling, like some people hate content creation, but if you love storytelling and you want to make stuff yourself, at least that is still a potential venue, for you to try to get on. But obviously, there's millions of people uploading millions of things a day, so breaking through is hard. But at least if you can go out and do things cheaply and shoot yourself, you know, um, at least that's a venue for you to share your story or your art with people. But I think going back to what I had pre-COVID is years away.
Sounds like it's time for the Great American Road Trip. I think
I mean, yeah, I mean that's possible.
yeah.
I would love it. I mean, I actually had a plan, and I think we came up with it together about doing like a motorcycle trip around each state
Yeah.
in the U.S. and doing them like in alphabetical order or something like that, as a way of just showing like first of all how beautiful each state is and how different they all look, and just the different kind of people. Because I think when people look at the United States from the outside looking in, they see just one big country, right? But it's not. Like each state is so unique and so different. And I thought like I could do like not like a tough ride, but do a motorcycle trip like and just meet people like a little bit like nomad, like
Yeah.
like meet some chefs, meet some artists, meet some people who are doing something that represents life in that state. And that was always super interesting to me, and maybe I can kind of bring that back. But then it's like, where does that live? How do you recoup capital? How do you hire a cameraman for 6 months or 8 months to do that? And then who edits it? And what are those costs? And are those like recoupable via broadcasting on YouTube? Maybe for Mr. Beast, yeah, but he's spending millions of dollars per video just giving money away. Like
Yeah.
he's just a money burning, money making machine.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's such an interesting case study in where the world's at, because he does everything out of North Carolina.
Yeah.
He's not out here like everyone else. It's like, just goes to show, if you get the people to watch it, you can do whatever you want. You can start a burger chain. You
Yeah.
can start a chocolate chain.
There's a great Rogan interview with him, um, and he's 23 years old, and he's just banking it. But he says he doesn't make any money. He says he puts every dollar he makes back into production, which is admirable. But that's only something you can do when you're 23, right? Once you're like 35 and you've got like a couple kids and you're saving for college and stuff like that, you have to be a little
I'm
bit.
sure he's keeping some of the T-shirts and the chocolate. Yeah.
The T-shirts and chocolate money for sure.
So,
But the money I think he gets on YouTube, he puts 100% of it back into production, which is admirable. I respect that.
yeah, definitely.
So you want to make something, like,
Yeah,
are you gonna? Should we make something together?
I think we should.
What do you think? What are you thinking?
I don't know. I think I love the American road trip idea. I think, but like you're saying, like the times are different. If it's not a big celebrity driven show, 46-minute episode of television doesn't really make sense.
No.
It's social media, other alternative streaming platforms. It's like Quibi failed miserably.
Oh my God.
You know,
Quibi.
but I
Quibi.
do think there is something there. In terms of like, people don't watch things in the same ways anymore.
No, straight up.
And I think being forward thinking about that is how you can continue to make a living making things.
I just don't want to make the thing. There's two things for me. There's two things for me. I don't want to make stuff that makes people dumber.
Yeah.
That's a big deal for me. And I just feel like so much of the stuff out on social media makes people actually actively dumber. And I think that's a big red line for me. Like I just don't people are already dumb. Like they don't know what's going on anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'm not speaking specifically about the United States. I'm speaking like globally. Like there's not enough global education and global awareness for 8 billion people to be actively knowing what's going on all the time. Like there's definitely huge gaps. And I just don't want to, continue to participate in making people dumber. I don't know how to say that nicer.
But that's exactly it. It's the balance of how do you do something that's sustainable commercially, but is something that you're like proud of and you think is like legitimately doing something positive.
Yeah, like I don't know if I want to make 100 grand dancing on TikTok.
Exactly.
If I could only do it.
If the foot finder career doesn't work out, maybe you can go to TikTok dancing.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't dance though, so it's a problem. But I was hoping at least I could have. So my goal here, and I can tell you about this because you get it, and you've been working with me for years. The goal here, I think, was just I just came to LA and I was like, I don't know anyone here. Like I know you and Zach and a few others and things like that. But I was just like, I want to have like I want to start this podcast or restart it because I actually started it during COVID where I was doing audio only. And I did some interviews in 2019, which I banked, and then I started to release them during COVID. And I did a few just on my own, which I still like doing. I don't mind just chatting by myself. And I think before I started this venture and put all this stuff together, I think my goal was to have 1,000 conversations. Yeah, and just to be like, if I can't like figure out what I'm going to do next or figure out how to weave it in, whatever I do next will be based off of what I'm doing now, which is just sitting here chatting with friends.
Yep. Yeah. And it's people have an appetite for that now too. People want to hear real people talking about real things
because it just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
It's strange. Like I was chatting with someone again the other day, and they were saying like more people believe what Joe Rogan says on his podcast than what CNN, Fox News, even like PBS or whatever. Like they just don't believe in any legacy media anymore. And I think that's a term that Elon Musk threw out there into the world when he started trying to rebrand Twitter into X, right? Like a place for real freedom of speech, right? And to kind of break away from the legacy media. But I mean, you can't make any. I think Tucker Carlson makes a shit ton, but I don't know anyone else that's making money on like streaming on Twitter or X now.
My philosophy is just be distrustful.
Be distrustful of everyone.
Mainstream media and podcasts alike.
Yeah.
Don't listen to anything we're saying.
Spoken like a true American. Yeah. I'm Canadian. I'm much more trusting and much more willing to listen and to buy in.
Yeah.
It hasn't helped me at all. I wish I was colder and a little bit more of an asshole because I just don't want to be that person. Yeah. But that's kind of, you have to have that hard exterior sometimes to like make it in a town like this for sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, boss. So what should we get a drink?
Yeah. That sounds great.
Thank you for coming to do this.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
If you ever want to like come back and just promote something or you want to just chat, swing by. If you know anyone doing anything cool, great. Tell them.
Sounds good.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, love what you're doing here.
All right, so this setup is epic, and then we can go to this, which is the 2-person.
Oh, nice.
Give me some love. Boom, and then from here I can fade to black, and we're done.